Hey, I'm Mike. Welcome to Firewood. In this episode, we are going to turn this into a sheet good carrying pickup truck. I know what you're thinking. Mike, you own a Mitsubishi Outlander Sport. Those were designed for carrying large loads of lumber, off-roading, mountain climbing, all that stuff. Absolutely, I get it. But mine didn't come with the roof racks. So instead of spending $200 to $300 online to buy the official ones, I'm going to cheap out and use this universal kit that I got off of Amazon. It's absolutely not perfect, and it's got its flaws, and if you have a roof rack built into your car or have the funds to go get an official one, I absolutely 100% recommend you do that instead of going this route. But if you don't, or you'd only like to spend $50-ish to get yourself a plywood carrier, then this is the route to go. And with a couple little tweaks, this thing works just fine. There are a couple things that I could do better, or that maybe the product could be better at, but we'll get to that towards the end. Assembly on this is really straightforward. Take off the rubber feet, put the webbing through the little slot, wrap it around the pole, put in a nut and a bolt. That's about it. Off to the car you go. Once we have everything assembled, you need to go out to your vehicle and at least set this up in the position where it's going to be. You don't need to secure everything through with the ratchet straps to the doors just yet. Just get it in the general place where you want the rack to be. Now I know that this is a removable rack, so it's not going to end up in the exact same spot every time. But the braces we're going to build in a minute are going to keep things aligned every time we put this together. Once the racks are in place, we need to measure the distance from pole to pole, and that's going to help us determine where to make our cuts on our project in a little bit. Knowing this is not a piece of show furniture, I know I have the perfect two pieces of 2x3, 8-foot construction lumber in the basement. Just have to get that pesky living room baseboard out of the way. You could use 2x4s for this, but 2x3s are what I had on hand, and they're lightweight and will work just fine. Grabbing my trusty double-sided tape measure, I measure out the distance from the rear of the car to the first rail and mark that with my framing square. These are the brackets we will use to hold these boards to the rails, and I use it as a guide to mark where we need to drill. Then, using the center location from the rear bar, we mark out 30 inches, which was my measurement, to make the marks for the second brace. Grabbing my drill and a large cup of overconfidence, I drill straight through both boards without thinking at all. It's at this point I realize I didn't countersink the heads. If I owned proper tools, right about now I'd be using a Forstner bit to make these holes. But I don't. So I grabbed the largest drill bit I had and rounded them around until the bolt heads fit in there nicely. I repeated the process for the remainder of the holes, and then switched drill bits back to the correct one and drilled through for the final time. On the rear of the boards, we need to remove some material. We're going to do this at an angle to help minimize the damage caused by unloading and loading boards, as well as it making it easier to get boards off the top of your car by yourself. Grabbing my jigsaw, I cut the ends off the board. This doesn't have to be perfect. Just get a general nice slope and it'll help make your life a little easier getting things on and off the top of your car. Once the first one's cut, I lined them up, traced the pattern, and then repeated the process on the second board. Because I'm not a huge fan of fishing large chunks of wood out of my fingers, I did knock all the corners down and give everything a once over with some 120 grit sandpaper. On the front of the braces, we need to install some right-angle 90-degree brackets. The purpose of these is going to help stop the plywood when you're loading it up on top of the car, and also stop the plywood from flying into the rear window of the car in front of you as you slam on your brakes when a squirrel jets out in front of you. Drilling a few holes so that the 2x3 doesn't split, and adding a few 1.25" screws should be all you need to hold everything in place. Once everything is secured in place, we bring the wood over to one of the rails so that we can mark out the distance of the notch we need to cut. The purpose of the notch is to keep the wooden rails in place on the crossbars. They don't need to be pretty. If your cuts aren't perfect, don't worry about it. It's just to keep the rails from sliding front to back as you accelerate and brake. Once you have the first one done, make a template of the cut, transfer it to the other 3 spots, and cut those out as well. After the bolts are tapped in place, it's out to the car for final assembly. The wood is placed on the cross rails. The 4-hole plate is placed underneath and through the bolts. 2 washers and 2 hex nuts, and that's all you need to secure it. Once the first rail is up, attach the second rail in the same fashion. The whole process shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes to get the racks, the boards, and the bolts all in place. And then it's off to the store for some wood. Upon returning from the store, I just have to release 2 ratchet straps, pull the sheet of plywood down, and I'm ready to get started on the next project. Well, let's talk about what went right and what went wrong. I don't know if you noticed in the last scene there, but that front rail tipped back a little bit. And that's from the ratchet strap that holds those on and in the inside of the car not being tight enough. I made a second trip to the store, bought a second sheet of plywood, really cranked down on that thing, and it didn't budge the whole way home. The other problem is on the feet of those universal rails are little rubber boots that sit on the bottom. They're great when they're on the car, but when you're carrying them on and off, they just fall right off. There's no grip at all. So I'm probably going to run a bead of silicone or something around those. Maybe you've got a better idea on how to hold those on. If you do, let me know below. Other than that, everything works great. I no longer have to worry about how I'm going to get sheets of plywood home. The whole project was done in less than an hour. Aside from plywood, I can carry long boards, maybe, I don't know, living room baseboards that are just going to rot in my basement. Leave one rail up, load your lumber up, slide the other one across, wrap it up with some ratchet straps, and off you go. If you'd like plans for this project, they're listed on my website below. Other than that, leave a comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time.